Good morning, everybody, and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be in Orlando.
Yeah, I heard where your mom is.
My mother lives here, so that's why I came this year. That's right.
So, always great to see you, Mark. You know, I travel a lot. I don't know actually anyone in this room or anywhere else who travels more than me. That's you.
Well, in the last month, I've been in Australia, China, Algeria, UK, France, West Coast, East Coast, Canada.
Oh my
so
God.
Hopefully that's helpful, and maybe it'll allow me to give you a little bit of perspective.
That's right. That's what I was going to ask you. You know, many things happening around the world here. Given you're such a world traveler, I wonder if you can kind of give us a perspective of how all the worldwide events you experienced and heard and seen and witnessed really affect the appetite of investment in telecom infrastructure.
That's a good question. I think that, first of all, global events in the last year since we were here, and I think last year there was the election which took place on the evening, and it's sort of, to some extent, almost overshadowed some of the activity that took place here at MEF. And a year is an amazing amount of time in order to take stock. A large amount of arguable instability, whether it's in Spain or here in the United States or wherever the case, some inconsistency. And then most recently, perhaps less caught here in the United States, the 19th Party Congress in China, which I think has delivered, from the Asia perspective, a good amount of clarity and perhaps therefore a consistent approach to stability. Some might argue that the Chinese economy has now been very clear in stating its message of that the domestic market is clear and it's going to expand using the Belt and Road Initiative globally. And I think that's a sign for consistency coming from Asia. And as far as the infrastructure question, I think that what we've seen also is private equity firms are taking a greater interest again in physical infrastructure and not just in software startups. In Hong Kong particularly, we've seen two of our competitors be bought out by private equity environments. They seem to be fueling those values over there. We see some of that also now in Europe. A lot of the investment banks running processes. So I would say that physical infrastructure from the investor's point of view is back in, and some of the discussion that we heard earlier about the appetite for gigabit and beyond from our perspective will certainly drive that. Having said that, I think the industry is headed to consolidation because of all of this change technologically and financially, and we've already had some of the panelists explain what's happening.
Yeah, okay. That's good perspective. You know, speaking of Asia and globally, you know, in terms of Hong Kong Telecom as well as PCCW, how are you guys doing in, you know, Hong Kong and globally?
Well, HKT, which is our parent, the trust, is actually financially doing quite well, very stable. PCCW Global is the international operating arm of HKT. We have a mission to provide services to multinational enterprises and service providers globally, and HKT is the domestic retail arm providing service to consumers, to enterprises, and to other service providers. Both environments, thankfully, are doing quite well. 2016 and 2017, despite aggressive competition. We have a huge amount of fiber in the ground. Today over in Hong Kong, over 90% of homes can be reached by fiber to the home. Our 10 gig fiber to the service is catching a lot of penetration, despite perhaps because it's offered at a very competitive price. And we're seeing more and more applications. In mainland China, where we're also serving, you're seeing a dramatic use of IoT applications and payments environments. Two quick examples. I don't know if you're aware, but 11/11, which is a solemn day in the UK and in Canada and the United States, in China is known, as you know, Singles Day, and it's sort of the China version of Black Friday. $25 billion of transactions took place over the Alibaba platform in less than 24 hours. One example of how dramatic things are happening there. And secondly, I think from my visit to Beijing is to see the simplest deployment of IoT applications is perhaps bike sharing. Bicycle sharing in China today, more than 16 million bicycles in China, close to 12 million registered users just in Beijing for that service. And you can see that IoT is being used for simple bike sharing as a last mile alternative for getting from place to place. And it's really remarkable the way IoT is starting to deploy through very simple approach to leveraging payment systems, transactions, QR codes, and the mobile device.
You know, I haven't been in Beijing for a while, but rumor has it just the back all over the place.
Everywhere, everywhere. I'll show you pictures later.
Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. The rumor has it that PCCW is in the process or has completed the acquisition of a company called Console Connect.
Not a rumor. Not a rumor.
Not a rumor, okay.
It's true. We're very pleased about that. PCCW Global acquired the assets, the brand, and the people, and the intellectual property, and all of the software capability with Console Connect.
Yeah,
the CTO of Console Connect, Paul Gamp, is here, and I encourage all of you to meet with him and with other members of the team. The network component and customers were acquired in a different environment, and that's why the announcement around it was a little bit complex.
Yeah.
But we did want to share, particularly publicly, to the networking community in MEF, the public announcement that, and we did complete this week before last, that we have acquired what is most important from our point of view. And I put a couple of slides just to show you some things. If you just add one slide, don't know if we'll see it there. Well, that's our physical network globally, and the IP backbone, and it has a large number of physical interconnects, MPLS, NNIs, and so on, and it's the environment that we use. But if you go to just the next slide, Console Connect just gives 4 environments that we put up here on the slide. Important to understand that it is a software-based platform allowing network to cloud connectivity with the click-as-you-go capability. We acquired, we believe, a depth of software talent that will allow the physical network that you saw in the first slide and all of the IP and software-capable engineers in that environment to interface with cloud-capable software development team that we believe will take us not just from network to cloud, but now also cloud to network, and I can expand on that in a moment, and importantly, network to network, which is what a lot of the MEF discussion is about. At the bottom, I left you with a URL, and that's actually let's call it an engineering-based social media platform. In other words, any of you here can click onto that and to interface in that environment, which will maintain neutral to us in the Console Connect brand, will allow engineers to interact around issues associated both with software, with IP routing, with connectivity, which has always been the case, and one of the beauties of what existed in Console Connect, the ability to deliver a networking community in the social sphere, so to speak, in this environment, and we encourage all of you to log on and to try. That was, I just really wanted to put the slide up to show you the URL. So you can take it off now if you.
That's great. What do kind of you plan for the Console Connect? Is that to manage kind of your own networks, or you wanted to see that expansion? You know, I know you guys are, you know, global presence, and a lot of times you can help them.
We've had the IP backbone, which has evolved organically, both physically and with a lot of back office software capabilities under Dave Hughes and the team, who's a frequent speaker here. And we have also the applications team that we acquired mostly from Greece back in 2014 under Yannis Giokas, who's also here, offering security as a service and various algorithmic capabilities around that, and importantly, a portal-based platform for managing applications for customer usage. So those two environments will now interface together with Paul Gamp's team in order to create not just the physical layer and the application side, but now also a more advanced approach to orchestration around the physical layer. We've spoken quite often here about what we called internally Program Oscar, which was an O for orchestration, which dovetailed exactly to the LSO plans and so on, and we've done various demos around that previously, and all of that is now in place. But importantly, I think that what they will also be able to take us to is into a more flexible environment and help us internally to drive exposure of the back office to the end user. A lot of the discussion that's been going on here this morning has been around what has to happen next on the technical side, where do we do, what are the interfaces, what are the migrations. I think we see that quite clearly in Hong Kong. But we need to be doing a bit more, I think, internally in assuring that we're taking all of this software-based capability, not just interfacing it with the physical capability and opening physical infrastructure and capability, but taking back office systems. Perhaps first billing capabilities or pre-sales or quoting capabilities, and we have some demo around that locally. And then over time also exposing what the network can look like, which we would normally look at behind a screen and not show to the end user. And we believe that Console Connect will be driving us to this network-to-network capability that exposes to the end user directly what's happening behind the scenes. And I think that that's where the value will be delivered. So hopefully that's the objective.
Okay, great. But do you have ambitions to use Console Connect in terms of packages that sell to other service providers, or is it mostly internal tool driving the efficiency and the capability for end customers?
So, you know, it's very interesting. I remember last year you asked me, and maybe you're going to ask me again, what can we be doing more in MEF or different? That's always what you're asking me every time I see you, actually. If I listen this morning, I think there's a tremendous amount of work that's going on. If you read 3.0 and everything that's there, the exciting part for me is the inter-operator, inter-provider,
that's right.
intra-provider element of certification. The elements of that are primarily technical in nature. Mm-hmm. And here I want to highlight Shahar's work with MEF around the commercial attributes side. It's critical in my view, and I mentioned this last year that I felt it was important to do, and in fact in the last 12 months MEF has done a lot, and we're going there.
Thank you.
But the commercial attributes issue is not prominent. So I want to give it a bit of a commercial, if you don't mind, and to drive it, and perhaps using from listening this morning to create a messaging differentiator of, I hope, of value. A lot of what we've heard today is about retail networks delivering their services with various environments. The intra-network, inter-network reference point in the architecture, in the certification elements and architecture that's described in 3.0, helps create a new element of segmentation, which I would call at a commercial level the wholesale interfaces.
Sure.
Okay, how does one network interact with another network at the back end in order to facilitate the retail side?
Yeah.
And here we see Console Connect will be quite critical for us in helping facilitate that. It will help take our current physical program of N&I relationships and so on, extend that into the software-based domain, and hopefully create our platform not just of availability for enterprise users, but perhaps for other wholesale networks in order to facilitate one another.
Yeah, so this is actually a really good point. As the chairman of GLF, for those of you who don't know who GLF is a global leadership forum, which hosted by Capacity, and they're meeting, at least twice a year at the ITW or Capacity Europe. And Marc is chairman of that, and if you walk in the room, there's 30, 40 industry leaders sitting around representing all the major carriers around the world. They're not top pricing, just so you know. And it really talking about how to actually work together. Yeah. So recently, I visited you, and thank you for the invitation, and we really have had a good discussion and then start to agree to collaborate between GLF and MEF, and I think the audience would appreciate you explain that.
I think that fair point. So GLF Global Leaders Forum is a small group of service provider representatives, mostly, all of them coming generally from the commercial side of the business. Yeah. Usually the most senior executives in many of the companies that you represent here, dealing with the commercial wholesale component, either for commercial settlement or for productization on the wholesale side. Right. And it made sense. I think Kevin joined us together with you in October, and we put forward the notion that the Global Leaders Forum wants to assure that at the commercial side, people are no longer just dealing with fixed capacity costs on a per month basis or settlement of wholesale minutes, but rather how is the industry going forward commercially? And we felt that MEF was delivering a lot of value in this space, particularly around the commercial attribute side. Yeah. And the GLF tabled a motion to work together with MEF to assure that MEF would be able to help drive the commercial attributes that would be endorsed by the commercial teams in the Global Leaders Forum to create the next environments. Actually, AT&T is leading the subcommittee on that, George Sloan, and one of the first working elements is to focus on bandwidth on demand. How can that be leveraged across networks at a wholesale capability? And it'll be critical for MEF to actually act as a working body to facilitate that. And the GLF will offer its guidance, so to speak, in endorsing those efforts and to make sure that, similar to the colleague that mentioned earlier about the mobile industry, that the roaming technical parameters were augmented, and I think we mentioned this last year, were augmented by the commercial arrangements. GLF and MEF working together will hopefully create what that addendum will look like for bandwidth on demand or for other variant applications that might exist over a 3.0 environment as you've described it.
Yeah, so this is something really exciting. Marc has been really the catalyst, leader behind this commercial and technical combination where delivered values, that where the money is. So it's really important to work at that, and I appreciate that offer and appreciate that collaboration.
I'll just add one last thing. I'll say in summary of that, it's important for all those who are technical in the room on the engineering side, if you're interfacing with the product houses, you want to push forward the commercial message as an adjunct to the technical work that you're doing. And if you're able to think in this environment where everything now is agile, software developed, and we're all sitting in a room trying to work out together what are the common frameworks, let's not just look at what we're doing on the retail side, let's also focus on the wholesale, the backside. Because in that environment, we can work collaboratively globally. The colleagues from Telecom Italia Sparkle can work together with PCCW Global, can work with Tata, can work with AT&T, can work with Orange, can work with Colt, and we can be leveraging off of each other's platforms and environments. Frankly, if you look in the retail e-commerce space, Amazon doesn't really have all that much of its own independent inventory, right? They're leveraging other inventory environments, and their value is in creating that front-end distribution platform. A MEF-governed framework can help facilitate that same capability if we organize ourselves as an industry intelligently with the wholesale side and the retail side.
Sure.
And hopefully that intra-network component on the technical side of the MEF spec in 3.0 can yield itself to the commercial attributes and will provide the driver for getting that done.
That's really crystallized the MEF 3.0. We always wanted to have 3.0 to be a platform to combine global resources, whether it's retail or wholesale. Like I mentioned earlier today, I push the button, you actually have luxury to access the entire world network resources and service capabilities and leverage everybody's network without necessarily going into, box and all done automatically. So that's great. Thank you, Marc. Given the time constraint here, I have one last question and maybe have a couple questions for the audience as well. So what are your objectives? I mean, every year I ask you the same question, but what are your objectives for this coming year with the team? And then how do you see MEF as a junction point in terms of fit into that?
Well, operationally, we need to organize ourselves for both the retail distribution and the wholesale side, and to make sure that the acquisition of the Console Connect colleagues and the software depth that we've added there gets integrated smartly, and frankly, that they start to lead the legacy side of our business and some of the excitement that we've had on the applications and the IP.
Where's it based, by the way?
It's a mix, California, Australia.
Okay.
Paul Gamp, who's the CTO, is based in Brisbane.
Okay.
So it's exciting that we now have a new sunny location on our map to deal with.
You can add that to your itinerary.
Well, exactly. It's a 9-hour drop from Hong Kong. It's not that bad, actually.
That's good.
It's Beijing.
9 hours.
There you go.
That's walk in the park, for you anyway.
So it's quite good. The team there is excellent. We've had a chance to visit with them, and so the key will be to move very fast and to make sure that the services that have been offered on the previous Console Connect platform will now be integrated as quickly as possible to the physical network that I showed you before, and we hope to publish a very fast schedule, perhaps also over that social media environment that I shared with you. So that's important to do that organizational environment, and we have to continuously change the way we're facilitating. For instance, operationally, one of the things that we're going to need is to move the sandbox environment that Daniela from Sparkle mentioned that we're doing together with them and with Tata into an operational environment. 1 year ago, we presented at the POC certain elements that were demo, and this year we're showing that same capability in bandwidth, in restoration on demand. We're showing that actually in production.
Awesome.
And the teams will be able to see that. This year what we're showing in POC, Devesh Gupta, CY Hui, and all of the team that are here are showing the fact that we are beginning to expose our pricing capability. In other words, what we've had on the behind in our back office systems around how to get a price quote, how to build a network, and basically to allow end users to design their own network, to become their own pre-sales advocates inside our environment. We'll be presenting that as POC. Don't quote us on the pricing there because we've just used samples. But hopefully by next year this time, we'll be able to show that in production as well. And I think that that is an important piece. So how do we move these elements into more production more rapidly? That is going to be the objective, to assure that teams are delivering not just retail capability, but wholesale capability around what I've described. And for that, we'll need to have more onboarding. And we have organized ourselves to make sure that the old physical NNI relationships will now become an onboarding capability inside the software-based relationships. And I think that that's going to be the key. And we need to be open to new vendors, new ideas. We cannot do everything organically. We have to work with the community here as much as possible. And we look forward to welcoming as many into our environment and, as I say, exposing the back end to the end user.
Great. Marc,
Yeah, it's great
pleasure.
to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you.